buttons.
Oh, they give us all sorts of buttons on this thing to push.
Oh yeah, it's very Star Trekky.
Go live. Are you sure you want to go live? Are you absolutely sure? Like, I wouldn't have pressed the button in the first place, you stupid machine.
Could you imagine modern combat if it was like, are you sure you wish to pull the trigger? Are you sure you wish to pull the trigger? It'd be like, I think we covered this in training.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we are supposed to be dealing with that. Oh, hey guys, it's Patrick. How you doing this evening? It's weird. I'm not talking about Star Trek tonight, at least not right off the bat.
I mean, I'm prepared for that.
Well, that's always helpful because we do that a lot over here. But I am more than happy to be welcoming one of my oldest friends in the Shadowrun writing community. The young man who took over as the Vampire Prince at Shadowrun when I retired. Oh, we got someone in the chat. Hi, Goblin. How you doing? Welcome to the party. Go grab some friends. Bring them in. More the merrier.
But yeah, that was
fabulous.
10 years ago.
Has it been that long?
It's been 10 years, like almost to the. No, I don't know about to the day, but no, I remember I went through the entirety of my 20s going, how do I get into anything I want to do? And then the moment I turned 30, I met you and I got into TTRPG writing, and
wow.
I met my agent and got into voiceover. And so that was, and I turned 40. So it's been 10 years.
Good heavens.
I love that I will always be a young man to you at 40. Like, my kids look at me and go, "You're 40?" Yeah.
Yeah, my kids look at me and go, "You're pushing 60?"
It's like, yeah, but I mean, we got that Harrison Ford energy where, like, you're gonna be handsome old for a while, and then it's gonna hit you real hard just one day you wake up.
At some point, I should be that lucky and have my dream at this point is to somehow come out looking like James Hong does in his 90s.
I mean,
have you seen pictures of him lately?
Yeah.
He looks about my age.
I mean, for the Star Treks in us, it's that whole, like, look at Patrick Stewart, tea, Earl Grey, served hot. That's your elixir of life.
Yeah. Well,
I do hope we talk about Star Trek, though, because there you go.
That's my elixir of life. Yeah.
It's a doctor for a reason. So
indeed. And for those who are wondering, this is Kevin Czarnecki. He writes for Shadowrun and many other things. I don't know if we ever made the formal introduction, but here we are. We have made it now.
We're very likely to just start like babbling friendly, and that's the fun of a podcast, I think.
Indeed it is. Mm-hmm. So what you been up to lately?
Surviving the economy. Good
luck with that.
Yeah. I'm teaching a lot.
That's good. I was going to ask you about how that was going. So.
Well, I mean, the voiceover is more lucrative, both as a teacher and as an artist. But I've actually had the absolute pleasure of networking in about over the past 2 years. I've networked in about half a dozen new game writers. Some of them get their first like shared word counts at Catalyst, and I've helped a couple over at Onyx Path, and
that's great.
It's nice. I mean, you grandfathered me in, so I'm keeping that,
isn't it?
Yeah, I'm keeping that tradition flowing, and it's I don't want to treat it, because somebody was like, wait a minute, are you leveraging your work as like to outsource it and making people pay you to write for you? I go, no, that I teach writing. I'm not putting somebody on the spot unless they're good for it, because my reputation's on the line if somebody does poorly.
Right. Right.
Which I think all of us have done that at least once.
Yeah.
There was I've had a couple. I remember you tried to introduce a young writer to Shadowrun, and he was like, okay, so I've got this idea for a vampire terrorist group. And we're like Fear of the Dark? And he goes, well, yeah, but they're like vampire supremacists, like Magneto. Like Fear of the Dark?
Fear of the Dark?
Well, yeah, but they use their powers to be immune to the things they did, like Fear of the Dark. Well, maybe they're part of a larger organization, like the Ordo Maximus. Well, it could be another one. We don't
technically need two.
Like I'm sitting here, and I've become that meme. The kids like, can we get McDonald's? We have McDonald's at home. I'm like,
yeah,
but we actually do. Like, could you? There's a lot of different things you could be saying right now. There's a lot of things you could be suggesting, and but this is like verbatim something we already have.
Yeah. I'm starting to remember that, and it's been a while. I've slept since then, but
he got so salty. I remember being like, "We can work out something that hasn't already happened." No, he was viciously angry that we had the audacity to do it before he showed up, and and then I never saw him again. So
I remember the conversation. I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, I cannot remember his name, and even if I did, I wouldn't out him here.
So, no, I wouldn't either. It's one of those.
It's just
there it goes.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. You see a lot of writers come, and you see a lot of them go, and some of them aren't very enamored with the pay, which who could blame them? Rates have gone up, but of course not as much as the price of everything.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of amazing. Like, you don't remember a lot of their names if they left ungracefully. I've known about a half dozen bad writers. And I don't just mean like they weren't good at writing. I mean like they did bad things to their coworkers. They did things that weren't good for the product, that weren't good for the readers, and weren't good for each other. And it's weird to see that kind of ego enter into a space that really should be about like, let's make beautiful things, Yeah,
let's work together and make this happen.
Well, Whack, Thomas Willoughby, we were having a discussion the other day about how we feel as writers, and he said, it's not that we're lore keepers, we're custodians of a world, of a setting. And I remember thinking, I was like, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's really something. Actually, pretty much covers it. That's a great way of putting it. I know I feel that way a lot about what I did. I was just kind of I was just kind of there, keeping the pushing the broom and keeping everything in its lane. And
well, I've had a couple people who are just like you're just randomly inventing crap, and I go like 90% of what I do isn't very inventive. I might help define it more. I might answer some crossover questions or break it in a little bit, but I mean, somebody told me that Red could not be built rules as written, and I said he was built rules as written in 3rd edition. So I mean, they were Bull's homemade vampire rules, but
they were in fact rules,
and they were rules from one of the people who writes for it. I'll take it. But yeah, I was like, there's nothing about him that breaks the lore of the setting. You can't have an elven vampire. I could think of 2 of them off the top of my head from the novels at that point.
Yeah, let's not go there, shall we?
Yeah, I was like, the funniest thing is on the rare occasion that I go on the Shadowrun Reddit, which no freelancer wants to, because it's just a cesspit of negativity. But there's constructive criticism, and then there's just hate and hostility.
Yeah,
and that doesn't get you anywhere. But there was this one guy talking about something I had written. I think it was blood magic, and he was trying to explain the author's intent. And I said, well, no, actually, it was more like this thing. And he goes, that's not what the author intended. And one of the other freelancers was like, oh my God, this never happens. I never get to be here when this happens. And I just said, and I was like, why don't you tell him who I am?
I had something like that happen at a game store years and years ago. I had just started. We hadn't even really gotten into the vampire stuff. It was stuff that I had done. It was something I had done for some of the additional writing I'd done for Canon Companion, where I cleaned a bunch of stuff up, and some guy was saying, "Well, that's not how that rule works." I said, "Yeah, it is." How do you know? I wrote it. And he calls me and he goes, bullshit. And I'm going, and I'm looking at one of my friends who was my roomie at the time, who was there when I wrote it. I was literally printing things off and saying, James, would you look at this for a second and tell me what you think? And I'm like, James, do you want to tell him?
It's kind of weird. Some fans get so defensive about the property, or at least their primacy in the property, that I mean they'll stomp the floor out from underneath them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
But I never asked you, and this is something I've wondered about.
Okay.
I mean, when you and I first talked, you found out why I'm into vampires. Between my health and what have you, I know where that came from. I am curious, how did you get into vampires? Because I know you as a Trekkie, I know you as a Babylon 5 guy, I know you as many a splendid geek, but never in our conversations have I thought to myself, this is a guy who knows everything about vampires. It's a compliment, mind you. I don't mean to doubt you.
I take it. I take it as such. Hold on a second. All right, Lars. Let's see here. I cannot tell you how many rules arguments I've had over the years. The biggest one I recall is if the tinting is dark enough. Yeah, if the tinting is dark enough, it will, in fact, actually work.
It's true.
As I recall and as I interpret the rules. Getting back to your question, I remember reading Dracula at a very early age. I was probably in 4th or 5th grade.
Sorted.
Somewhat, yeah. But when I got into 6th grade, one of my teachers finally figured out why I was always so bored. It's like I'd already read what the class was reading. I remember the first time it happened. We were doing a unit on Arthurian myth, and everybody else was everybody else in the class was reading such and such, and she comes and drops Mallory on my on my desk, just so that I, don't start fiddling around and letting my ADHD take me to the windows and causing trouble in class. And I think she was the one who dropped Stoker on my desk a second time. And I said, well, I've already read that. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, then she went and found something else to keep me occupied while we were. But then I guess my freshman year in high school, someone handed me interview.
I could
Interview with the Vampire.
I know it's total blasphemy for a guy who does so much vampire stuff in his career as I do. I don't especially care for Anne Rice.
She could get her prose could get very purple very quickly, and
she puts exclamation points in places they just don't belong. And I mean,
she really did.
Not just an exclamation point. You know, it's like Interview with the Vampire. I remember upper left corner of the page I was reading, and it was like, "You must have been very young," the boy exclaimed, and I'm like, nobody talks like that. Why would you exclaim that?
She was. I liked a lot of her story elements. The actual prose, not as much. But
well, there's something else about Anne Rice. Her vampires were never very vampire-y to me. To me, the most engaging thing about vampires is the fact that they are glass cannons. It's the very thing that makes them so hard to role play, or at least integrate into a mixed group game.
Yeah.
Since we are here primarily to talk about role play stuff.
Right.
If you've got a standard human, I've made the argument that a vampire versus a human is a fair fight. And people will be like, what? But a vampire's got regeneration or super strength or super speed and life draining and mist form and da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. And I go, yeah, but with sunlight, he's kind of useless. You know, if you've got a cross or whatever article of faith works in that setting, if any, you're fine. And they're absolute glass cannons. There was this third party, third edition D&D. There was a book called Fang and Fury. Really cool book that was all about vampires, how to use them as antagonists, and how to play as them. Loved it. Still love it. It's still really well done. And great art too. Wonderful concepts. And one of the things they discussed is that using a vampire at the table is difficult because they're an all or nothing proposition. If a group is not prepared for a vampire, that vampire is going to walk all over them. They're going to do hit and run, mist form, domination, life draining, snatching. They can keep regenerating. And on the off chance that the group somehow manages to defeat it, it turns to mist, flits off to its coffin in a hidden location, and the group better make good time before it regenerates and comes back.
Right.
That's a fight you're not equipped to take on. On the other hand, if the group is carrying a bunch of garlic and holy symbols and holy water and stuff like that, that vampire is not even going to pick the fight. They're screwed. Wow. So it's so the power dynamic is so circumstantial that it's really hard to run that in a game. So I remember thinking about that and thinking that's interesting and awesome and cool. And I look at Anne Rice and her vampires don't actually have problems. I mean, post Queen of the Damned, Lestat can go in the sun. But then we do Tale of the Body Snatcher, and he's all like, oh, I wish I could trade bodies with a human and go in the sun. You can go in the sun, brah. Yeah. I'm not sure where this is coming from. You don't even have to drink blood. And it's not even something you earn over time anymore. You just blood cycle with somebody and get hyper powerful all at once. It's like cheat grinding a game. And they can fly, and they've got zero problems. And here's one last funny thing, and everybody hates me when I point this out. They're like, the biggest problem with Twilight vampires is that they sparkle and don't burn in sunlight. And I go, I hate to tell you this, but canonically, Lestat glows under fluorescent light. Like, I
never actually finished her vampire cycle, but she got me. By
the end of it, there was like Atlanteans and lizard people and shit. It got out there. by the end of it, like it got Christopher Pike, the last vampire levels of excuse me? I'd love to say you missed something. I'm not trying to like, pish posh all over the legacy of a celebrated writer who's seen levels of fame and success I will never approach. That's fine. She earned her fame and she earned her infamy in like word stride. But let's face it, that's goofy.
There was a lot. I read up to, I think I finished Queen of the Damned, and she that's as far as I got. But that is what kind of stirred my interest back up, because I was never a super fan. But then we had that. You had Coppola's movie, which I thought was absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, it still is.
I love Coppola's Dracula movie.
Oh, it holds up. It's one of the best.
And
still, it's still one of the best.
Yeah, and
was it 30 years later now?
Something like somewhere in that ballpark, 30 odd years later.
Still one of the best. Beautifully made.
And but I mean, I kept on with that, but what got me onto the vampires in Shadowrun, and in a few minutes I'll turn back to the chat. I'm not ignoring you guys. I turn back to the stuff in Shadowrun just because, I mean, I don't even remember exactly how I got started with that.
There was a writing assignment. You said I could do that.
That might have been it. I'm not sure how. I can't for the life of me remember what I had done to make Rob think that but I'd done something, and I kind of drifted along, and I had talked about trying to find ways to make it work, because at the time I was fairly adamantly against vampires and the other infected in SR. And look where I am today.
Yeah.
Look where my name is permanently associated.
The first time I ever saw your name was in that I like recognized it, not as just like a bunch of authors at the beginning of a game book, but it was on the Shadowrun boards where we met, and it was your quote, "I've taken all vampires to be my province," and that was and I was like, man, this guy must really be into the effect. Nah, not especially. I mean, he's thought about it thoroughly, but it's not like a thing about him.
Yeah, but I had fought it because I was like, there's a perfectly serviceable game about playing vampires.
Yeah, but it's a very different experience, though, isn't it?
It is an extremely different experience.
That said, Sail Away, Sweet Sister really played with the beast and humanity roles, didn't it?
I really did, yeah.
I still use your writing in my curriculums.
Seriously? I did not know that.
Why wouldn't I? You wrote like short form fiction with tied in rules. It's literally perfect. It's a whole meal. It covers everything.
Well, I am flattered to be part of your curriculum.
Hey, I only take from the greats.
Let's jump into the chat here for a second. Yeah, she did live in New Orleans for quite a while, Lars, and that's not where I met her a couple of times at a couple of different, not conventions, but she did signings in Texas and stuff. Really nice lady. Anne Rice was, I mean, my opinion of her prose notwithstanding, she was a nice lady. She was really great with her fans. everything you kind of want an author that you've met to be. I mean, I've met a few that were jackasses. I will not name them here.
Oh God, that one of my most influential writers. I told her when Crimson came out, I wanted to give her a copy because her style informed mine so much. And it turned out she was a crazy cat lady who is super duper into herself and really, really mean. And I just I was heartbroken.
Yeah, there are times you don't actually want to. You don't actually want to meet your heroes. I've met a few of mine, and it's been a fantastic experience. It's been wonderful.
I've met a few of mine. One or two of them, absolute champions. I'll name drop one. I've talked to Steve Bloom a few times, and that guy's easily one of the most rock solid dudes I've ever met. I mean, zero ego, huge sense of humor. This is a working dude with a very realistic sense of what we do is so much fun. We can't take ourselves too seriously, but we also don't want to treat it like it doesn't matter. It matters, but we have to remember it's fun. And never let your ego go out of control. Just a solid human.
Yeah, I've had when I was a much younger man, and I was trying to get into the business. I was in some writing forums, writing echoes. Yeah, Drakes will do that to you, Goblin. I was in some writing forums, and guys like Stephen Bruce and John DeChancy and Lawrence Watt Evans, who I don't communicate with them very often, but I would ask them questions, and they would take the time out of their day to give me and say, "Okay, here's this, try this, and here's my advice."
Oh yeah.
And I did not. I remember one day. It wasn't you; it was someone else. But I get this email at my work my work email. It's like, could I ask your advice on this? It's like, wait a second. I'm the guy now. And that is the weirdest damn feeling the first time it happens. That is absolutely one of the strangest feelings. I don't know that I necessarily appreciate it as much I didn't realize what I was, that I was kind of becoming that guy, that I was becoming, this.
Well,
for lack
Patrick,
of a better,
imposter syndrome's a son of a bitch.
It really
it's
right on the nose there, buddy.
I had somebody invite me to a panel not too long ago, and they were like, "This guy's a veteran. This guy knows what's up. And I'm just like, I'm just a kid. I'm just a 40-year-old kid who's been doing this for 10 years and is, oh my God, I'm an adult. It's there's no, and this is a tiny tangent, but I hope it helps some listeners with their own imposter syndrome, because this has helped me a little. If you look back through history, there have been coming of age ceremonies in a lot of cultures for a long time. It could be anything as formal as a bar or bat mitzvah. It could be as informal as, when you're 16, we take you on a deer hunt, or, you go camping, or I drop you in the Canadian woods with a knife, and if you can make it home, you're a man now, or whatever, It could, and some of these were horrible, and some of these were wholesome, and some of them are spoiled, and some of them are silly. But a coming of age of an officially recognized, codified coming of age ceremony. Uh-oh, is that my internet? Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay. But an official coming of age kind of ceremony is something we have lost as we've lost as a culture. Now, we haven't had that for a couple generations, and it kind of shows because you've got a bunch of like 50-year-old boys and girls running around who have no idea that they're adults. And I mean, that gets passed on to their kids and so on. And I mean, the internet's bad enough what it does to us, you know. And I'm a child of the internet. I'm a liminal generation guy. But there's really no idea when you turn into an adult. And a lot of adults have to act like kids to make money now. There's the cult of eternal youth, but there's also the don't treat me like a kid. Age is confusion and confusing. And hello, Grumpy Scott.
Hey, Tack. Happy birthday.
So yes, all of that. So you, Mazel Tov, many happy returns. So you want to talk Star Trek or Shadowrun? I came equipped for both.
Well, I was going to ask what's been going on lately in SR, just broad strokes.
Like plot-wise?
Yeah. With our, you know, let's stick with our stuff. Let's don't get the whole...
Okay. I can't give away the big bad stuff, and there is some NDA whatnot. I will say, do you remember a while back? I've laid enough breadcrumbs that the canny reader can pick it up. But you remember you and I had a discussion about why infection changed in editions, and they all became dual-natured and a little more flexible. And we discussed a certain reason that might be.
I vaguely recall this conversation. Yes,
coincided around the time that Shadim and Ghostwalker came out of the rift and all that stuff.
Yes,
I ran with that.
Oh, bitchin'.
That was it. RJ was like, I think Patrick might come back and write with us. I'm like, well, he can't have his old job back. I'm working way too hard. But there was.
That's okay. I've been doing it part time. Like I said, you know, emeritus.
Nobody does this full time.
So right there under my name, emeritus.
Well.
I'm like Pope Benedict at this point.
But no red shoes.
God, no.
So they so I've had it where Asamondo's been on a major, like, you know, if you're infected, come on home to Asamondo. There's a lot of experimentation going on over there. There's a lot of construction. They did a lot of like earth elemental deep mining type stuff. And they've effectively, you saw it. Dark Terrors is the first book that I know of that I got an Any for with everybody. It's not just me, but you know how all the books for a while had like setting in the back third of it?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that whole third along with a bunch of other chapters. I looked at that book and I remember one of the freelancers who doesn't like me got real salty that I said this, but I looked at the book and I went, I think I wrote half of this book. And he got so angry. He was like, don't take credit that isn't yours. I'm like, but I wrote this chapter, this chapter, this chapter, and this much of the book. It might be hyperbole, but I wrote a lot of this book, bro. But it was that whole back half was Asamondo. And like defining its culture and its architecture and its government. And, you know, I didn't have much to work with. You had come up with some really good stuff, but you never had a lot of word count to get detailed about it. So I was extrapolating very hard. I did get one of the best compliments ever. If I can flex and share about that.
Flex away, man. That's what we're here for.
One of the reviews said, this is one of the most disturbing things I've ever read in an RPG. And I was like, I guess you never read any Black Dog Game Factory or Fatal or something, but okay. But I responded. I was like, I hope you enjoyed it. And he's like, oh, you're the author. I wanted to tell you specifically. I'm so glad you saw this. You made me feel sick to my stomach. Let me explain. And I'm sitting there like reading out. Let me explain. I'm so glad you said that. He goes, you described a culture, a civilization that made sense for what they are. You described a lifestyle that made sense for what they are. The bar made me queasy. And it wasn't the aged 7 years blood. It wasn't any of that stuff, because you expect that stuff. He said it was the blender. I got sick when you talked about the blender. And the thing that I wrote, I had Red and Traveler Jones go to meet with another guy to do a trade-off thing and get out of there. And I wrote it switching between Red and Traveler Jones so that you'd get an infected perspective and a non-infected perspective on the same spaces, the difference in what they focus on and how they feel about it. And TJ is like, he's in the bar and he's looking at the bartender and the things he's like making. There's of course the bottles of quote unquote wine that are, mildly alchemically, it won't scab over blood. I hate it when they pour blood into a wine goblet in movies. That is to aerate the wine, which makes it scab if it's blood. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's why we have special alchemy to keep the blood running. So I was like, but ghouls are going to come up here too. It's Asamando.
Yeah.
It's like ghouls are the most here.
What
would they drink?
They spelled a lot of. They have smoothies.
They'd have a slushie.
Yeah.
And it's defining all the things he's putting. He's putting pink stuff into this blender, and it goes, when he hit the buzzer, there was a smell that hit the room, and I couldn't identify it until about a month later at the dentist. It smelled like when your teeth get drilled. And I remember, like, I've had people go, hey, I can't go to the dentist anymore. And I'm just like, looking out for you, bud. Just that visceral sense memory, stuff like that. So anyway, Asamando is, there are allusions to what the Ordo is trying to do with the thing that we discussed, which credit to you. The core idea is yours. And I want to very publicly be like, somebody's like, where do you come up with this? Well, it was Patrick's idea originally. I've added a lot, but the seed comes from him. That's
people don't want to know about some of the talks we had, I'm sure.
Oh, like the apocalypse plan?
Oh yeah.
That's part of it actually.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yes, it's I'll put it this way. If this plays out the way that I want it to, and RJ seems to be very on board, I'm not holding his feet to the fire or anything. He's in a management position. Sometimes things change, but he seems pretty excited. If this works out the way that I think it will, we will have we will actually be able to build a convention event around it.
Wow.
We'll be able to have a dungeon crawl in Shadowrun, which, like 99 times out of 100, I would say that's completely unnecessary. But I mean, I grew up playing like DNA DOA, and that was a dungeon crawl for Shadowrun.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. Asamando is building an underground arcology. It's being called... Yeah, it's being called the Necropolis. This particular event, something bad, and I mean, like, spoiler alert, something's going to go wrong in the zombie ecology.
Who saw that coming?
Yeah, like, I'm telegraphing my punches as far away as I possibly can. If you read Dark Terrors, you can probably put together exactly what's going to happen. but I've been throwing Easter eggs and seeds out for a long time. A couple people tried to pull the trigger early on it, and I was like, "Don't you fucking dare!" Any of you who want to be game designers, by the way, let me tell you, the one thing that is missing from this generation of writers, this current crop that's going on, is they have absolutely no sense of foreplay. They want to get all the plot out right now and then have it wrapped up inside 3 books. It took 2 editions for the Chicago bug breakout to happen. It took 3 editions for the arcology shutdown to happen. Those earliest seeds for both appeared in the earliest books of Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Sit back, relax.
Oh.
Enjoy yourself. Have a
as somebody who consumes media, don't you like it when there's like little bits of mystery to put together, little conspiracies you get to make your theories about? Like, I wonder what'll happen with this, and maybe it'll happen like that. People are still making like lore videos postulating about what's going to happen in Warhammer 40K or Game of Thrones. Even now, they're still doing that.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want to encourage the same kind of mystique and the same engagement from your audience, where they get to fill in those blanks and have their theories and argue about it and debate about it and have fun with it and take ownership of it? And I don't know, it just seems like everybody wants to get a whole idea out as quickly as they can for fear that somebody will misunderstand them or screw it up. And it's like, no, have faith in your audience. Have faith in your
my audience. I generally have faith in. It was some of the other people that we were working with that I had issues with.
Many of them have moved on, quieted down, or everybody knows that they're not good to work with.
Hallelujah.
I've gotten private messages from game dev, like line devs, saying, "Hey, we know you had beef with so and so. Just so you know, they're kind of burying themselves. I don't think you'll have to worry about that anymore." And I'm like, good looking out. It was weird. The one time somebody tried to cancel me, I got contacted by 2 studios I'd never worked with before, saying, "So we heard so and so tried to bury you. As far as we're concerned, that means you're probably a good person to work with." I was like, this is backfiring.
This is not working out how they intended, I'm sure.
I got canceled into more work.
Yeah.
And the people I was working with are inclusive, progressive, kind, moral people out to make a good game for everybody. So I was like, I remember that line from Kingdom of Heaven. It's like, your quality will be known by your enemies if wherever you meet them.
Yeah.
I was like, sometimes it really is like, oh, you don't get along with that guy? What's up? Let me buy you a drink. You must be okay.
Let's talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that if I've been canceled, no one's bothered to tell me.
I never heard of that. And I mean, it was one attempted cancellation. And I'm not naming names. I'm not even giving clues. I do not want the drama. And I don't mean any ill to them either, because we're all trying to get through life. The world is cruel enough without us trying to take each other out.
Yeah. That's one of the things one of the things I've learned over the years. I'm super glad that I got out when I did, because it was being actively bad for me. It was starting to get, things are starting to get very dark up here.
The clicks weren't great at the time.
Yeah. And even as I returned to things, John wants to see Red Rain, and I'm more than happy to finally finish that. I might have to actually write after midnight.
Do me a favor, and anytime you talk to John, tell him to email me.
I'll next time I have cause to communicate with John, I will pass that message along.
I will return the favor to that guy. I love talking to that guy. He is fun. He is creative. He is nice. He is smart. He is the worst person to get back to you.
He really is
In the world. That is.
I had just it's like, and my brain it'll circle back around to that thought. We'll get there, but I was real happy to hear from him. I was like, dude, I'd planned to do this on Hollow Streets, but it occurs to me that, you know, do you guys still want this? And he's like sending me back this big, you know, Dwight Schrute gif going. Dude, I emphasize this stuff.
Like
that's pleasing to me. That
I feel like Hollow Streets is. I'm so glad third-party publishing is being opened up in so many studios, and I'm really glad to see it in Shadowrun. But I also think it's a wonderful opportunity for new writers to, you know, put something on their resume, get noticed, be like, I worked on this. Here's proof of work. You know, incidentally, those of you who want to get in the industry, build a resume. But how do I get experience if I don't make your own stuff?
Absolutely.
When Patrick arranged for my introduction to Jason, I didn't know it, but I showed up perfectly prepared. I hadn't planned on it, but I had the right questions. Jason was like, Patrick says you're good. So what exactly do you bring that I don't have already? And I was like, it's a fair question. And I answered it better than I did with Rob, where I wrote Crimson and he said TLDR.
Yeah.
But I started asking, what happens if a ghoul gets infested by an insect spirit? What happens why aren't insect spirits investing into big animals and small animals? You know, what happens if I use infected stuff in blood magic? We've established in the lore that a infected, like a ghoul, can eat a bug spirit. Can an essence drainer feed on an invested like host and therefore suck it? They don't have essence. Do they drink the potency of the spirit? And if they do, could they theoretically learn advanced metamagic where they can basically perform an exorcism and like suck a spirit out of somebody when they're possessed? Could vampires be the next big Shadim hunters? And he's like, this is terrifying. Can you stat it? I'm like, I already have. And he's like, when can you start? So I make stats, make books. I used to write RPG books for myself. I formatted them because I liked them to be pretty and show my friends. It was like my arts and crafts, you know? And then it turned out that was a body of work ready to go. I had a portfolio and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
You have all the tools necessary through any third-party publisher, whether it's Hollow Streets, Storytellers Vault, Pathfinder Society, or if you must, Dungeon Masters Guild. And you can format it. You can make it look pretty. You can put open source art, you know, license-free art and stuff. You can make it look good, and you can write it and edit it and show that you know what you're doing. That's a wonderful proof of work. That's a beautiful proof of concept.
Yeah.
So
and you might make, you know, pocket money off of it at the same time.
I know of one property. I don't know if I can say what it is. It basically will not be professionally, like the studio will not be releasing any more stuff for it, which the writers are sad about because it's not exactly that they lost a license, more that this one studio is pressuring them not to, and they don't want to rock that boat.
Yeah.
But they did say nothing's stopping the fans from keeping it alive. And there's a couple of small collectives, basically startup studios in the tradition of old Green Ronin 20, 30 years ago, that are keeping it going and putting out great stuff.
Yeah.
So this is your time. Like this is, I know that the heady golden days of Critical Role may be over, but I feel like we're getting back to the grassroots of it's your time to take control of this stuff and keep the AI from stealing our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Critical Role, bless them for doing what they did, but man, they set for some of the stuff that I do, man, they set a bar that I can't ever reach because I can't afford the production values.
I don't blame them. I have a lot of shared connections with them. So there's a lot of inside baseball I can't talk about and just shouldn't. I will say, bad people that were excised aside, while I don't personally care for the medium of Critical Role, I adore the people who make it. And I'm easily one of those guys where if I've met a cast member, I've just been like, hey, love to meet you. And you can see that they've sort of developed this, oh crap, is this a fan who's about to fan all over me? And it's like, nah, just a fellow gamer, just a fellow voice actor, just chilling. I mean, obviously not as successful, but
I try to do actual plays on this every now and then. It's like, okay, I've got to stop trying to live up to something that I don't have the production value. I need to start leaning into what I do. That's another thing that I would tell newcomers. Don't try to be somebody else. Be you. Lean into what you do.
Your passion is where you do your best work. Same in voiceover, same in writing, game design. Make the things you like. Other people like it too. It might not be the biggest crowd, but it'll be the right crowd for you. It's the one you need. They're yours.
It's just one of those things. I'm trying to, it's like, I tried to do I don't know if you saw it. The recording is still out there somewhere on my channel. But it was a catastrophe because when I do live streams, I need to do it like this, where I have someone to bounce off of, someone to talk to. If I'm going to be doing a game, I need to record it so I can edit out some of the. Right.
That's the most animated I've ever seen your face in my life, by the way. Ever. That was amazing.
Well, it's been captured for the posteriority of posterity now, so somebody will be able to go in at the about the 51-minute mark. And
well, we're talking about what you do. So I came so armed to talk about Star Trek.
Let's do that then.
Yes, and I know that's what your regular audience is more into. So I want to make sure there's some of that in there. And I was talking to one of my students who's writing for Shadowrun now, and I told him, I'm going to be on Patrick's podcast. Incidentally, you're super into Star Trek, right? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, do you want me to pass your name to him? See if maybe he can help you get something there. He's like, would you? I'm like, you're a very good writer. Yes, I would. I wouldn't do it unless you'd be an asset to something. Like, the work comes first. I want you to succeed, but I need you to be good enough to make that work good. There's no nepotism, but there is networking. So I'm gonna pass. I'm just gonna say his name on the air because I believe in him. Nick Morris, great guy. He's writing for Shadowrun. He actually made a game of his own with some friends back in the day, like a card game thing.
Cool,
dude's fantastic. I'm gonna be putting you in touch with him. But we started talking about Star Trek, and I was like, Patrick's invited me to come write with him for Star Trek. He goes, oh, man, that's so awesome. I'm like, I don't think I can do it. He goes, why? And I said, well, I love Star Trek, okay? I do. But there are some technological plot holes as a role player that I would not be able to reconcile. First off, death does not exist in Star Trek, and you can't make me think it does. Tasha Yar did not have to die. In fact, nobody has to die in Star Trek. And I'm not even talking about, like, augment blood from the movies bringing you back to life with, like, regen hypos full of, whatever. I'm talking about the transporter buffer. The quantum entanglement sample that you leave is like a respawn point, like System Shock 2. There's no reason. I mean, every time they transport you, they're killing you and making clone of you wherever you go. And somebody's like, no, they don't. I'm like, okay, then who's the real Riker, Thomas or William? They're killing you and making another you.
Take your time. We'll wait. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, crap, Data got blowed up again. Just beam up the pieces. What happened?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't understand why the transport buffer isn't used to just res people all over again. But on top of that, Voyager established that you can have an entire like experimental warship, the Prometheus, I think it was, that could be piloted by like 2 AIs, like 2 holographic crew members.
Yeah.
That's okay. I guess we don't need crews anymore. And as of Picard, you don't even need transporters. You've just got a little walkie thing where you go through one and come out another. So we just need a ship to go and deliver some transport nodes and to explore, to explore new life and seek new civilization. No, we just send drone ships out there to drop new transporter things and we walk onto that planet. Bingo bongo. I think we did see on screen that the buffer can only hold one person at a time. Well, how's that work? Tell me about that.
I'm kind of interested because I can point to at least a couple of incidents where they've had more than one person in there for long periods of time.
Scott.
Well, Scotty
yes.
had Scotty in Relics.
Mm-hmm. He was sitting in the buffer for a good long time. Great episode.
It was a fantastic episode. I cry to this day because that was
me too.
That was Jimmy's. Well, that was Jimmy's last appearance as Scotty.
I know, man. What a send off, though.
It was fabulous.
Gave him his own runabout and just let him. Man, awesome. Yep. But if the buffer can only hold one person at a time, then like you wouldn't send a whole away team. You can hold one buffer of a person at a time, I think. But even then, that's still your respawn point. If we're talking about the J.J. Abrams verse, when they made transwarp transport, I was like, you broke. We don't need ships anymore. I could just beam everything I need where it's got to go now. So why do we have ships?
Yeah, well,
for that matter, we've got like holographic slave labor now. Like all the Robert Picardo, the Doctor holograms are mining dilithium somewhere and reading Rebel literature in Voyager. So
yeah, I think they got. I'm pretty sure they got past that, but there's. I'm not saying there's not problems.
Yeah, I just as a role player, I love finding ways to creatively use technology. I'm absolutely the technobabble guy who looks to LeVar Burton and goes, "You, sir, you changed everything." I'm absolutely the dude in this situation who goes, well, if we shunt ion energy into the transwarp buffer, we should be able to project a semi-solid warp bubble state that'll pass us through the nebula. And somebody will go, that somehow makes sense to me. But I'm also sitting here going, nobody has to die. Heck, I'm going to transport a bunch of holograms onto a ship, I'm going to, defending a ship, just put holo emitters everywhere. And you can... We've proven that if you take the safety regulators off, a Tommy gun can kill a Borg. So why are we putting our people at risk?
It's more dramatic that way.
Yeah, but it's like
I'm not going to try to defend the plot holes because I know they are there. But
it's not an attack. But I demand answers. It's a curiosity. It's an aggressive curiosity. I'll put it that way. I've met people who are like, stop getting down on Star Trek. I'm like, I love Star Trek.
If I thought it was an attack.
Yeah, I love Star Trek. I love it enough to criticize it. I'm a big fan of Star Wars too, and I know because risk is our business. Bless you. Federation economy. Yeah, they've got an economy, sort of. They just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
They pretend money doesn't exist, but gold press latinum is a thing. I know that's a Ferengi thing, but still, like,
it's recognized over much of the civilized galaxy, whether it's the
is
Ferengi or the
yeah.
Klingons recognize it, the Romulans recognize it.
Is Romulan ale illegal just because of the neutral zone and the bad political thing with Romulans, or are we
Pretty much.
talking this is like, or is this just space absinthe and you really shouldn't be drinking it because it'll
Pretty
make you go
much,
blind?
yeah. It's a political thing.
Okay. I just thought it was blue Kool-Aid that tasted bad, judging from like, Shatner's face.
Yeah, it's not it's nice and potent. It takes a while to ferment, but
too true. I'd wanna know about Star Trek outside of the Federation, and I have trouble writing things that don't have an economy, which I'm so glad that that got brought up. Thank you, Grumpus Scott. That's another thing. I like my treasure at the end of my adventure, and Starfleet doesn't pay a wage because we're post wealth, but we aren't.
Yeah.
But we are.
Yeah. Don't get me started. I just roll with what's there. It's like, okay, let's work within these confines and see what we can come up with.
I always thought Romulans were an analogy to Cuba or the Middle East, so no importing from them. Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah, like I said, it's a political thing. It's 100%.
I get it. I dig it. That makes sense. I guess there's I would have more fun playing Star Trek as Okana than as Kirk, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, and we're at a point in the game where you can do that if you want to. You got, God knows, you got to find a GM who will run that campaign. But
it's that's one thing I did like about Picard. I felt like Picard made even less sense, but had some great fan service.
There are a lot of issues with Picard. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was, but there were
Yes.
issues. There were issues.
Well, I wanted to debate it, and people got defensive. I'm like, I'm not attacking it. I like fan service. I read manga. I'm here for just the emotional payoff. I did think killing Data and then bringing him back was a little comic booky, but whatever.
We've already established that it's pretty comic booky. You got coming up on 58 years of the show.
Can't really kill anybody now.
I'm older than the show, so it's only by a few months, but
still,
if you count the filming of the pilots, then I'm not older. But
well,
the
release.
The first episode released in September of '66, and I made my debut somewhat earlier than that.
It's a good way to put your birthday. My debut. But there's I would love Star Trek with I'll be honest. I think this is a total betrayal of its original intent. But then again, I think the show's kind of moved past the Gene Roddenberry intent at this point, the way that it tends to play out.
Everything it has to at some point, because
yeah.
I mean, good Lord, Gene died 30 years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, some of what he thought was absolutely beautiful, and some of it was pretty problematic. But
I recently had cause to reread the novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And
that movie's why I'd never use a transporter, even if I wasn't worried about the metaphysical state of my soul or even the continuous consciousness thing. The whole, if you've ever seen The Prestige.
Yeah.
The Prestige, somebody's like, what's The Prestige about? And I said, you ever wondered about transporters in Star Trek? And they're like, sure. That's the whole movie.
Yeah, that's it. That's it right there.
Yeah. Somebody goes, why wouldn't you use a transporter? I'm like, because I don't know if I'll be the man on the stage or the man in the box. Thomas Riker wonders that. I guarantee that.
Yeah.
So
rotting away in it. But I mean, I had cause to go back and reread that novelization, and I love a lot of what Gene came up with. But when I am looking at something going, God damn, this man was horny.
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
okay, they're in this existential crisis. You got V'ger coming for Earth, right? Spoilers for a 40-year-old movie, guys.
Yeah, warning.
Just I thought I'd let you go. You know, Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out in '79. I'm going to spoil a few things.
You know what? If you're late to the party, that's your fault.
At this point, with as many avenues as there are to see, and I love the motion picture. To me, it's probably the most Star Trek-y of the Star Trek films. But the novelization, they're on this thing heading to Spock is going into this observation gallery where there are a lot of little private cell, little private rooms you can meditate, or in the case of several people around him, screw. I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
It's like I'm like,
Somebody tried telling me there's no hanky panky in the holodeck, and I was like, bull. No, that.
As Lower Decks has indicated at least once, that's what it's for. That's mainly what it gets used for. And all you got to do is watch Lower Decks a couple of times. Watch one of the holodeck episodes on Lower Decks, or one of the cleanup after the holodeck episodes. Go clean out the biofilter in the holodeck 3. It's like, oh jeez. Well, it all gets to you.
It all gets reprocessed back into the matter converter for the replicators. So be fully aware we're all eating recycled everything, which is, I mean, in fairness, that's reality. That's how physics works. But still,
I'm just, there's, I think it's the 3rd season of Discovery. Admiral Vance, the commander of Starfleet, is dealing with the leader of the Emerald Chain, which is a smuggling, an Orion smuggling operation.
Good program, Grand Nagasaki. Hi, RJ.
Yeah. Hi, RJ. How's it going? Welcome to the party, man. And they've got replicated apples on this tray. They've got this little hors d'oeuvre tray, and she's just digging. It's like, pretty good for shit. And she's like, "What? It's all replicated." I mean, it's like everything recycled. And it's like I'm just sitting there going, I'm trying to think of somebody in the 32nd century who doesn't know that everything is replicated and what, where all that comes from. That's like,
I mean, once you've been through a transporter, you're replicated, is all I'm saying. Like, shuttles only. Barclay knew what was up, okay? That was just, man was ahead of his times. Like, we're going to shame him for, like, doing stuff in the holodeck. We all do it, Troy, okay? I'm not saying it's not gross that he's using his therapist. That's weird, but we all do it, and we should all be ashamed. The only one who's not doing it is Data, and even then, it's only maybe. He is fully functional. So
he is.
I know yours like it never happened, but it happened. But there, back in the day when video games had manuals, and those manuals were amazing. Wing Commander 3, one of the manuals was written as a guide to people who just been stationed on the TCS Victory. It was like the shipboard magazine, basically. And one of the letters to the editor was like, "Hey, loving the writing, but I got to tell you, ever since you wrote about where your food comes from, I have not been able to enjoy the double-digit delight pie. I know it's all technically clean proteins, but I don't know. Now I'm just aware, and I can't." I'm sitting here like, yeah, that would work in Star Trek too, wouldn't it?
Oh, in spades, yeah.
But I mean, you break things down to their molecules. We are all of us have at least one molecule of carbon that was once upon a time dinosaur poop. So, I just try to think, well, I mean, it's about what format it's in right now, not about what it's been. Everything's been everything. So don't worry. But
we are stardust. We're the universe made manifest, trying to figure itself out.
Yeah, and sometimes stardust is poop. Star Trek. Da, 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 da.
Welcome to our world.
But yeah,
my God, the tangents we get off on it.
It's all Star Trek. It's all valid. But there's a lot of stuff. I mean, again, I'm the writer who asks the questions about the places in between. I don't come up with a lot of original stuff, but I'm really good at tying stuff together and asking where things interact. And a lot of stuff in Star Trek, it kind of feels like they wrote it in a vacuum without taking into account other things.
Unfortunately, you're not far wrong on sometimes. We as far as the game line is concerned, we have a phenomenal group of writers. And
I'd love to work at Modiphius. I don't know what to say. I'd want to bring back the bluegills.
I'm not sure that hasn't been bounced around.
I mean, like, Star Trek to me was at its absolute best when it was doing horror. And I know that's not going to surprise you or RJ or anybody who reads my stuff, but like early Trek was creepy as hell. Or at least early Next Generation. I grew up on Next Generation. All respect to original series, but it's my first, and I'm not alone there either. It's
you're by no means. Guys like me are a dying breed, literally.
But I've had stick around, man. Come on. But
I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. I'm just saying,
I will say
I am for all intents and purposes 58 years old, and
I've met enough like old school Trekkies who will just, if it's like, well, Next Generation was my onboarding, and they'll just be like, that's a good place to get on board.
There are worse.
It is kind of the gold standard of Star Trek, it still had.
I would hold up DS9 from a storytelling standpoint as being
I can't argue with
better.
That. I don't like the aesthetic, but the
storytelling was
phenomenal.
It was a stage above. It's not my favorite show. I understand why it is a lot of people's, though. I completely understand that.
I think it was at the heart of the Star Trek experience. I think DS9. This is where I've had people go, oh, I'm like, look, DS9 and Babylon 5 came out around the same time, and I was a B5 kid. So to me, the space station with politics, I'm kind of here for like the Narn Centauri War, Yeah. So, but I get it.
But as I have been working with the game, I have come to realize something, especially with the newer shows, because we've got to find ways to bring more fans to keep it alive.
Yeah,
because as I said, I'm 58 years old, and I will not continue forever. I'm going to give it my best shot. I have no intention of kicking off anytime soon, but
good.
I don't have any control over that.
Yeah, we all get about half a vote on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things I have come to realize, and why I get so down on I started getting down on people who dump on, especially the newer shows. They are not necessarily to my taste. I'm not a huge Discovery fan, for instance. There's a lot I think in Discovery to interest me, but the show itself is not my favorite. I am not, as much as I enjoyed a lot of things that happened in Picard, it is not my favorite show. But it's somebody's favorite show.
Yeah. I wouldn't take that away from anybody.
Every Star Trek show, whether I like it or not, is somebody's first Star Trek.
It's how I feel about Star Wars. People will go back and be like, but the prequels are good. I'm like, look, we can nostalgically enjoy the prequels, but they're not good. They're not well put together or directed. We can enjoy them, but it's something I've had to explain. There's this Halloween party back in the day, and this one guy was just coming down on this other dude about movies. It was a Halloween party, and somebody put Queen of the Damned on in the background, bringing it back around. And this guy would not stop just laying into this dude who enjoyed it. And I just couldn't take it. I stood up. I was like, okay, buddy, stop it. And he's like, what? I'm like, no, it's not well put together. It's not a good movie, but it's a fun movie. Good and fun are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
Some movies are absolutely stupid and a lot of fun. And some movies are very, very good and not fun at all. He's like what? I go, okay, so Schindler's List. Is that a good movie? He goes, oh, it's one of the best. Is it fun? Oh. And I'm
now that you mention it, not so much. Yeah.
Queen of the Damned. Is it good? God, no. Is it fun? It's kind of fun. Shawshank Redemption. Very good. Not fun.
Is it? I just have to have my DVD sitting next to me. And
I'd like to tell you. I'd like to tell you, Jean-Luc got out of there that day. Which is, and this is something I tell my students, like, don't be afraid to be stupid as long as you're fun. And don't be afraid if it's not fun, if it's really, really good, because they're different flavors, it's like the whole subverting expectations thing. Like, oh, well, it subverts your expectations. If I tell somebody I'm going to take them out for the best steak dinner ever, and then I take them out for really good ice cream, it could be great ice cream. It's not steak. And RJ just pinned down what I was going to say. The Greeks say virtue is hitting the mark, which is why Big Trouble in Little China is the best movie ever made, because that movie is both fun and good. It's stupid, but it's fun and it's good. It did everything it set out to do.
It hit every single mark.
It did everything it wanted.
Without fail. It did everything it wanted to do. And I mean,
So I look at Picard and I go, I don't know if it's good, but it's sure fun.
Yeah. But like I say, every one of the series is somebody's first. Every one of them is somebody's favorite.
They all scratch different itches too.
A lot of what I do in Star Trek Adventures is character work. I do a lot of characters. I've done a lot of character adaptations, and it's the same thing. I may not like a particular character that I've been asked to do, but that character is somebody's favorite character.
Absolutely.
Thousands of characters have flown through this. I can guarantee you somewhere there's some guy whose favorite character is, I hear him new, with the big ears in Star Trek. That's their favorite character.
I'm with you, RJ.
Someone's favorite character is, maybe, Valkyrie, the Klingon woman in Star Trek 3, who got 3 lines of dialogue, maybe 4. I actually counted at one point. I can't remember though.
My favorite character is Jean La Roquette as a Klingon.
Maltz.
Yeah, Maltz. Joy Chu. Oh my god. That's see, that's what Picard is good for. It's good for making you tear up.
Especially that third season. That third season was a nostalgia trip, and it was handled beautifully. I mean, there were a lot of things that could have gone dreadfully wrong. But like I say, everything is somebody's favorite somewhere along the line. And I am, as we mentioned somewhere else, my job is primarily as a custodian. I'm not when I'm statting up these characters, it's not for me. I'm someone thinks that this particular character is, not to get too melodramatic, but, some of these characters have saved people's lives.
Yeah, that's not melodramatic. That's just true.
I don't. So I mean, I take care with all of the characters that I write. What are people writing down here that I'm?
That's. You know what? It takes a lot of self-awareness to see that, Red Shirt. That is just.
Absolutely.
We've all probably dipped our toes in that. It would be the rare geek who hasn't at some point dipped into toxicity for a second, being a bit elitist about it. Gods no. Anytime I have the moral high ground and somebody's like, oh, so you've never? No, I did. I look back in shame. But if you can look back in shame, that means you've grown.
I've said this on more than one occasion on these interviews and people have asked. I was that guy when Discovery came out. There's evidence that, the evidence is still out there. I've got, I have not deleted any of my old videos. The evidence is still out there of me being a complete jackass about Discovery. And once I finally started to watch it and let it be, and when it started to kind of figure out what it wanted to do, that first season is still rough, but about halfway through, they started figuring out, okay, this is what we're about.
Yep.
They started actually asking the questions, and for some people, it was too little, too late. I mean, it took me 2 or 3 times going through it because I had to get through it because literally the last scene of the last episode of the first season was the damn Enterprise showing up. And it's like, oh, they're going there. They're actually going to do this. I wonder what they've got planned. So I had to kind of figure out what that, because as heavily serialized as it was, you had to watch the whole thing to know what the heck was coming up.
You found your point of investment. That's the moment. That's your onboarding.
It took somebody, releasing that image. I'm going, is this something somebody made up? No, it's the last shot of the season finale. It's like, oh crap.
Well, I know a lot of early Trekkies who were like, I am Locutus of Borg, and they were just like, what? It's like, yeah, we're doing this. That was that big stuff. But I try to tell people who are trying to sort of work through the, am I starting to be toxic? Because much like an alcoholic, you never stop. You don't just magically shake yourself of something, but you evolve to sort of compensate and learn to live with the thing.
That's why people always see me with a Dr. Pepper in my hand. It may not be healthy. It may not be healthy for me, but it's better than Crown.
It's true. And I mean, it's, this is a hookah.
And, yeah.
This is shisha. I'm not saying it's good for me, but it's actually better for my blood pressure and my stress. And I don't drink, so everybody gets one vice. This is mine.
Yeah. I don't. I got sober in 2002. And
hell yeah, dude.
But that is why that's why you see me with a Dr. Pepper in my hand all the time.
Yeah.
Because I know that I could have one bad day, and fortunately, I've got a great support system around me. I've got my kids. I've got my wife who keeps me steering straight on that. And,
but it's that, it's like West Wing, well, what's wrong with having one drink? Because I don't want to have one drink. I want to have 20 drinks.
Yeah.
That's,
yeah. Oh, I it's like, oh, hey, Leo's me.
Which, I mean, isn't the worst thing overall. But but a character like that can provide that moment where you're like, oh God. It's one reason that I'm not crazy about the sort of sterilization of a lot of RPG products right now. Some of them are like, there will be no more slavery in our games. And I'm like, I can respect why that rubs some people the wrong way, but isn't it good to send a message that that's a bad thing?
Yeah.
Like, demons don't have to be evil. Well, they never had to be evil, but they're made of elemental evil. They kind of need to be evil, or what's the point?
Yeah.
I have a friend, another writer. He is half Japanese, and he saw that one very popular game line is no longer having half elves, and they were like, "Well, that's very dismissive and whatever." And he said, "Half elves made me feel represented, having one foot in one world and one foot in the other." He's like, "To white people, I'm Japanese, but to Japanese people, I'm white." And that gave me something to work through my stuff with. And I'm like, that's beautiful. And we're denying that experience. And I get that people want to play it safe. And I get that we should be sensitive to people's like needs and sensitivities. And I think there's a way to I think there's a way to have both. But I don't think that completely eliminating one end is the solution, because that just creates a different problem.
Right.
So, and it's in addressing problems that stories happen. There's an old saying for writers, stories only happen where there's bad things happening. My mom once said, "Why do you like all these dark things?" And I said, "Well, Mom, it takes villains to make a hero."
Right.
That we need something dark. I think there is such a thing as too dark. I've publicly said, when I found out where all monsters come from in Exalted, I said I will not ever play Exalted. That I got physically sick looking at it. But I still think that there's room to have evil without, for lack of a better word, whitewashing it out. There is such a thing as too safe to be interesting. It's just a question of how do you handle danger. So
you've got to be able to write about the negative things to show that they're negative, as a reminder that this is something that does not need to ever happen again. People tear down statues because they say they're glorifying such and such. And it's like, guys, one of the reasons we keep some of us keep some of these statues around is to remind us to never, ever do that again.
As long as it's framed that way, I think it's a good thing. But there are people who glorify that type of stuff. And you don't have to tear it down, but you could move it to a museum.
Yeah.
Like that's a compromise. It's I don't want to get too political on your Star Trek program, which is a joke for all. But it's why is Star Trek being so woke and political? Oh, you mean like the episode with he's white and black? Well, he's black and white. It's the politics are important to Star Trek. I would argue Star Trek is less interesting when it stops being political and asking those important science fiction questions. But no, Redshirt, I totally get what you're saying. And that's how I felt about Shadowrun. That's how I felt about Star Wars. When the expanded universe got like brushed aside, I was furious. But when you learn to approach something you love with enough love to be inquisitive about it, without hating it, that's how I moved away from my toxicity. I stopped being judgmental and I started being inquisitive and understanding that my subjective experience of any medium is not the same as anyone else's. There's something writers talk about called the death of the author. And in its most basic form, it means the moment that an author or any creator puts something out for consumption, they have lost the ability to dictate what it means. It now belongs to the person consuming it. When Crimson came out, one reviewer didn't get past the prologue and said it was clearly written by some neckbeard, weeaboo, trenchcoat, katana guy. And I'm sitting here like, well, you got half of that right. But the thing is, some people looked at it and said, this is a commentary on like AIDS. And some people said, this is about living with disabilities. And some people said, this is about disenfranchised people, or this is about getting over your own ego or whatever. And a few of them said, did I get it right? And I was just like, yes, every time. Because that's what it meant to them. They are correct because it's correct to them. Right. What it meant to me was just spitting lots of stream of consciousness onto the page to try to impress Rob Boyle and get a job. When he told me I don't really need a guy to write Infected, I've got Patrick Goodman. Hey, Rob, gotcha. But that was that's the moment. That's why I'm not sitting here like, explain transporters and resurrection to me. I'm just more like, I'd like an answer about that. And one day somebody better get on that, because wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity. If you need proof of that, like I said, the Star Wars prequels aren't very good, but Clone Wars is amazing. And Clone Wars couldn't have happened without the prequels.
Right.
So the worst a lot of these things will be is fodder for something better later. And everybody's allowed to have their favorites. I love Voyager for a bunch of reasons. Not everybody likes Voyager. That's I like that they didn't have like free red shirt refills and infinite photon torpedoes. Yeah. Awesome. I love that they had to modify the ship on the go. Oh, dude, Bad Batch is my jam. It's so damn good. I know people who don't like Star Wars who are just like, yeah, but I'll watch that Bad Batch. That's some good TV. I just red shirt. That's hell yeah.
That's I remember to this day I haven't finished the sequel trilogy.
You didn't miss anything.
I petered out partway through Last Jedi, and
honestly, that's the exception. I haven't met a single person who actually defends it. I think Jason Hardy, I was talking to him the other day, and he was like, "I think The Last Jedi was good. I'll stand by that." And I went, "You're entitled to that. I'm not gonna argue he's wrong." But I haven't met anybody who said, you know, that was how I got into it. I've met kids who like Rey. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. I'm fine with that. I don't think it was written well, but if you got something out of it, I'm so happy for your joy, and nobody got hurt. So yeah, good for you.
I had really lost my I probably around, I think I probably got to the end of Revenge of the Sith, and it's like, okay, I'm done. I didn't think it needed to go anywhere. And but then I I climbed back on at least for a while.
Most of the Mandalorian's pretty great.
When Mandalorian came out, it's like oh god, somebody's been watching their Kurosawa, and somebody's been watching their Clint Eastwood. And
you're talking about the Michael Biehn episode, and I was like, oh, this is like a Western and a samurai movie.
Darn Skippy,
they figured it out.
Michael Biehn in there. Good
Johnny Ringo.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Oh my god! And then they bring in Timothy Oliphant to play Vanth Cobb, and I'm just like, does this guy not play a cowboy ever since Go? Like, if there's anything in a Western, we have to call up Timothy Oliphant. And that's not even a mockery. He does it so well. It's just like, if I had an interview with him, I'd be like, what's it like having a niche? Wait, I know that. Everything I do is vampires. But
I was going to say, everything you and I do is a niche. And you're the one they go to for it. I'm not the yeah, well, I'm in a niche, and a niche, and a niche. Role playing is a niche. Star Trek role playing is a niche. The stuff that I do in Star Trek role playing is, I'm 3 niches deep, and I haven't even started.
And Hasbro is so excited for AI to do our job. Sorry, I'm just gonna rage about that. I'm livid.
Fire it up.
I'm livid. It's the idea. The idea that of all the things we could automate, we automated art. There's just, what really kills.
Why the hell can't we automate garbage collection?
Or just, if you're gonna do stuff that takes away jobs, then you better have a suitable replacement for the economy or a transmogrification of it. If you want to automate this whole thing, neat, please don't turn it into the Matrix, but you're going to have to figure out something post money if you're not going to give us money anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely think the people at the top they really think of it like they're playing a game of Monopoly, and they're playing to win. And I don't think they recognize that the moment you win Monopoly, you lose, because all your money turns back into paper and you're not a billionaire anymore.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you win? We won't buy your stuff anymore because you didn't give us any money to do it. Ecology and economy share some phonetic, some root meanings for a reason. If you're going to have to make a compromise somewhere, you can't say, you get a job, freeloader. Well, create jobs.
Yeah, no kidding.
Make them pay enough where I can do that. That's, get a job on a factory. The factories are automated. Get a job mining coal. We're running out of coal. Like, get a whatever. That doesn't exist anymore. A fellow freelancer tried to say, all you need to do is adapt. And I said, well, in voiceover, if you replace all the voices, my adaptation is my entire career is ended and I find a new one at 40. He's like, well, that's adaptation.
That sounds like is it a freelancer that we both know?
Might be. I'm not naming names.
I'm not asking you to. It's something about that sounds familiar.
That's oh man. But I found myself getting angry about it. And I mean, if I convince this guy, it won't change a thing. But the thing that always kills me is apparently artists can be replaced and laborers can be replaced. I'm a little curious, why can't coders and middle managers and corporates be replaced? Because it seems to me it'd be easier for AI to do their job than mine.
Yeah.
I'm just a little curious why AI is aimed in a direction like that.
Yeah, well,
from a logical standpoint, from I want to make money standpoint, I get it.
A lot of people can't tell if it's something that someone actually thought up, or if it's something that was mashed together by And then that's an entirely different rant.
Yeah. It's weird to see so many people weaving their own nooses, I guess. But RJ says, if we go AI art and writing, start calling me Kyle Reese. Word up, TechCom. Here for it.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, but I think very firmly, like I like big studios somewhat. I like that RPG and game studios have the capacity to pay a living wage, but between crunch and not enough pay and not enough work for the pay you can get in a freelancer economy, I think small batch studios are the way that gaming is going to go in terms of quality, whether it's TTRPGs, video games, what have you. AAA releases come out, whether it's 5E or EA, and something like Helldivers comes out and steals the show.
Yeah.
Or Larian had to pay for the privilege of making D&D. And at this point, people are like, why can't D&D be as good as Baldur's Gate 3? And I'm sitting here like, because it was a small studio doing it with heart.
Yeah.
Not crushing their workers.
They just have to... And it gets back to that thing we were saying, an hour ago. Do what you dig. You've got to love what you're doing, or it's going to be crap.
If you can write with passion and compassion, then most of the rest can be handled. Like, if after that, it's just balance and formatting, editing, phrasing. These are things that can be made better. But passion and compassion are probably the two most important things right now. If you write something cruelly, well, you're being a jerk. It doesn't sell well, no matter what they tell you. And if you write something you don't really have any feelings about, it's going to be no fun for you. You're going to burn out.
Yeah.
I've written things I didn't care about, and it was just, I'm just thinking I need it on my resume. And then years later, I'm like, what resume? I know the people I work with. Nobody cares. But
been there, done that.
Yeah.
What are the hardest words you've ever had to put in a story? Let's just some right. Let's just some that you knew had to be in that story, but God, it was painful to write. Mine were simple. They haven't been published yet, but to this day, the hardest phrase I have ever had to have a character say was "officer down."
Okay.
You and I have discussed this scene before, but the hardest thing I have ever had to have a character say was "officer down."
Okay. Mine was recent. RJ, you still online? Can I go ahead and give an excerpt of something that hasn't hit the shelves? It's let me go to my Google Docs where I keep all my stuff and see if I can find it. But it was let's see. I think it's one of these. I just got to look really quick. I've been doing so much. Oh, here we go. Yes. It's one of these. That one's not mine. Here we go. Yep. All right. I'm gonna give it half a second. I know nothing. I didn't hear a thing. I love you, RJ. Okay, so tiny little excerpt from an upcoming Shadowrun book. I don't think it's come out yet. Where I talked about it's a book for faces. It's a book for social engineering. And then there's the lies that feel good to tell. This might be akin to role-playing, disassociating with the unsatisfying aspects of your life and becoming someone you think you should be, faking it until you make it, or someone makes you. Or maybe you're pulling one over on folks who had it coming. Not much more satisfying than using the bad guy's tools against them. Or maybe you have bad news to deliver, and with a little flick of the truth, you can spare them some pain. Bull. I've heard them all. I've seen this kind of action before. Thorn, just another dead traitor. Snopes, your husband died to keep you safe. Plan 9, it's just a headache. Red, they're monsters. Fianchetto, I promise I'm coming back. Puck, this will help everyone. Elijah, I'm fine. That one,
Yeah.
I felt a little squeeze on my heart when I wrote each of those, and I just realized how many of the people I like writing in these stories, they're all hurting so bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was I would say that was probably one of the hardest ones for me.
Yeah.
It's always painful killing off somebody that you like. I actually have a harder time writing about the people who have to deal with the grief afterward.
That's
It's
that's why that particular line is
yeah,
tough, because
yeah.
you've met, you've read part of this. You know the character.
Well, it's something I tell my students. The corpse doesn't die. The corpse doesn't cry at the funeral.
Yeah.
So, character dies. That's tragic, but the pain is felt by the people who survive them. We don't have funerals for the dead. We have them for the living.
Right.
The dead
And
have fresh problems.
Yeah, that's why that's why that particular line is so tough, because if I've done my job with the person who said it and their
Yep.
relationship with this character,
Yep.
then I've made it work. But I knew it had to happen for the story. I knew that I know that things like that have to happen in the story. And I've been writing I've been doing it professionally for 25 years. I've been doing it for loads longer than that. And that's still one of the hardest things I had to do, is like, I want everybody to make it.
Yep.
I want everybody to make it out of the story, and I just know that everybody's not going to.
This person's got to die, and it serves the story.
And it serves a story. It would be a cheat. I'd be cheating if they didn't. And I still don't want to do this. And I've been living with this. I've been living with this character in my head for, since I first started toying with the notion of doing a sequel to Sister.
Oh God! Now I'm afraid you're going to kill a character I like. Oh man!
I'm since I started writing it, and since I picked it back up, I've had to face the fact that two of the characters that I like, are not going to make it out, and they're characters everybody's already met. I'm not going to say anything more than that. They are characters that everybody they are characters that everybody has met, and
it's the story file in me that doesn't want it spoiled. Like it's okay if you hurt me.
I say, and that's why a couple of the scenes have been so effing hard. Is I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, with one, I didn't want to do it. I've done it. It's still one of those things. There's a reason I'm not jumping wholeheartedly back into that world, that game. As because it's very dark, and I mean, you have to have light to cast shadows. But that doesn't mean that the world is going to get much brighter.
Yeah. But
and
it's
I
the, it's
can't.
the shadows that tell the story.
Yeah, I can only do that for X amount of time before it starts.
Yeah.
Which is why I had to leave. Which is why
I get
which is
that.
why I had a couple of people whom we both know who kind of chastised me for retiring when I did, and it's like, look, I said I wasn't going to rage quit. I didn't say I wasn't going to quit.
I do remember a conversation where I was like, hey, nobody said the door's closed forever, okay? He's doing what's right for him, and he'll be back when he's ready, if he's ready, and we'll love him regardless, because this is not the fulcrum of our existence.
But I just had a couple of people look at me like, what are you doing? It's like, saving myself.
Yeah. Sometimes it's material.
I was not being good for people around me. So I mean, I when I pick these projects back up, it's not necessarily a long-term. It's not necessarily going to be Patrick Goodman's triumphant return to the world of Shadowrun. You okay?
There we are. Yeah, I heard when I picked these projects back up and then froze, I'm like,
oh, yeah. I say it doesn't necessarily mean that it's my triumphant return. I've had a couple. Even when I left, it's like, okay, I've left these threads dangling. At some point, I have to do something to tie them off. And which is why I'm glad you haven't killed Thomas.
I would never. I have rules that I've had a couple of other freelancers. Like, we get somebody new come in and they've got their own like pet character that they've put into it. And I don't mean that dismissively, because I've got like a few pet characters. Right. But I've had somebody be like, can you explain to so-and-so why their like Jack Pointer, their shadow talker, can't solve the problem? And like, what are the rules? And I'm like, okay, the rules of your inserted characters, maybe even a self-insert in some cases, which handled responsibly, I have zero problem with. Obviously, look at Red. But the rules I have for those characters are they should be really good at one thing, have a secondary discipline, and interests. They can't be good at everything. They can be curious about other stuff, but they should only be really good at those things. Using Red as an example, sort of combat mage versus threats is primary. That includes infected and bug spirits and stuff. Secondary is social engineering type, face stuff. And the third being interests. He talks more about movies and music and pre-Sixth World culture than a lot of others. So that's his thing. But if there's a Matrix section, he's good to ask a question, but he probably doesn't have an answer and he needs you to explain it in layman's terms. So that's his use. The second thing is, you've got to remember that these characters are here in service of the heroism of the player, the reader. If your little character comes in and saves the day, that has the same feeling as a DM PC being the real hero of the story, and all of you were just here to watch the DM play with themselves. Interpret that how you will. The third big rule. So those characters are there to set up the players to be the big damn heroes. The exception being a novel. In a novel, Red gets to be the protagonist. Thomas gets to be the protagonist. Bull gets to be the protagonist. Ringmaster gets to be the protagonist. But the last rule is, if this is somebody's invented character, one, it's polite to run it by them when you use them to make sure you get the tone right. I've had people go, would EB say this way? And I'm like, yeah, that's about right. I've had somebody go, would Red say this? I'm like, as much as I love that you want to use Red, don't you think that Lyran would be more sensible to say that, or Ethernaut or Winterhawk? And they'll be like, oh, that's a good point. I'm like, I'd love if Red answered this, but this is an Elijah question. So, you can have Red comment, but the answer should come from somebody more suited. So,
Elijah researches.
You're not wrong. But there's so ask people if you're going to use the stuff they invented. That's quality control. It's not even ego. And if you're going to try to kill them, ask. Partly that's just polite. I'm not going to kill off the pet characters of writers I don't like. That's petty, vindictive, silly, stupid, and it doesn't actually serve the story at all. That's selfish and egotistical. I'm also aware that if you're going to kill somebody off and you ask about it, you are communicating to all the other writers, hey, this person could die. And there's a novel, I don't want to name which, where one of the much less liked Jack Pointers is killed at the end, bullet to the head, because he did an awful thing. And then he kept commenting in the source books. And everybody went, wait, so did that novel happen? And to this day, I'm not sure if there's actually been a satisfactory answer about, so whatever happened to that dude? What happened with that? I don't know if anybody ever tackled that. A little bit more communication.
RJ, if you can answer this question, I'd love to know, because I think I know the situation that he's talking about, and I'm now
I won't
curious.
I won't name the authors, but I will say I will name the Jack Pointer. Clockwork is in a quantum suspension Schrodinger's box situation. He's alive, but I saw him die. And if Clockwork has been a Shadim this whole time, that's going to be real funny to me. But yeah, a little extra communication can help. Thank goodness RJ caught me. I had Lyran commenting on something, and somebody's like, no, Lyran's missing in action, presumed dead. I'm like, where was I when this happened? But so a little extra communication always helps, and that's absolutely. So it's in service to you and your fellow writers to check with them. Personally, I hope Red never dies, if only because, let's say, to be honest, I don't know about that. I'll have to ponder. Yeah, or we'll have a phone call. We'll brainstorm, have some fun with it. We'll hell dive and talk deep lore. But I've had one of the big reasons that I made Red was because he could outlive me. I don't know how much longer I've got. That's maybe I'm going to beat the odds, but doctors told me, I could be dead soon. So, and hopefully not. I don't feel too terrible that way. So it would be nice to have something outlive me. That's my little legacy before I had kids. So it's these characters may mean something to somebody, and you don't want to screw with that too bad, because even if you don't get along with somebody, we shouldn't hurt each other. But yeah, that's my long ass tangent about how to handle your inserts. Make sure that due diligence is paid. And I know that some people, Crimson did exactly what I wanted it to do, because one of the readers, who is now a writer for Shadowrun, told me that it helped them get through their own disability, because I wrote a lot of it about my own health problems are a lot like vampirism,
Yeah.
So playing as a vampire is really good for me to feel cool about it, because I can't turn to mist and all kinds of stuff and regenerate. But it'd be nice if there was like if this wasn't like Blade in reverse, all the weaknesses, none of the strengths. I miss the sun and I miss garlic. So if you never know what that thing's going to mean to somebody. Red means something to me. Crimson meant something to them. You want to let that be out there and use it for that. Anyway,
it's always good. I mean, I hope that the stuff that I've written means something to somebody. I mean, I appreciate you. I don't know what portion of your curriculum that my stuff falls into, but
it's sort of graceful assembly, use of character, progression of plot while still leaving openings that the players can have their parts in. It's just so neat and clean, just boom, it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's dude, our very first conversation, literally how we met, was me telling you what your work meant to me. It's meant a lot beyond what you've done for me, getting me into this crazy world. It's that just reading that, I remember feeling validated, and that means something. It has value. If it didn't save my life, it sure as hell improved it.
Well, I don't know how I did that, but I'm grateful that I did.
With passion and compassion.
Well, dude,
what?
I'm hearing kiddos. I was just going to tell you, we've been doing this for 2 freaking hours, man.
It's been a minute since we chatted, buddy.
It has been a minute. We need to do this again sometime, but I've got to go and I got to go do daddy things myself. So
not a worry. But yeah, let me know when you want to do this again. I'll always make time for you.
No, I appreciate that.
You can explain transporter paradox to me.
If I come up with an answer, I'll do that.
How about this? Every time somebody gets transported, the old self gets shunted into a mirrorverse.
That would explain where those came from.
Yeah, let's get Marvel with this. Let's go nuts.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Great talking with you. I am so happy.
Thanks for having me on.
We got the chance to do this. I love you. It's been great.
We'll do it again,
guys. Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for showing up. It was nice answering the questions from the chat. In the meantime,
you got a nice crew here.
It's small, but it's a good crew. It really is.
Quality is more important than quantity. Boy, am I learning that.
Yeah.
All right,
if
till next time.
Till next time, man. You have a good night. And we push all the buttons.